Reading for morning coffee. The conclusion to Walden. To the sick, the doctors wisely recommend a change of air and scenery. You know how he took a change of scenery when he went to Ricketson's place?
Cape Cod.
Where was that? I don't know if it was Cape Cod, actually.
Wait, give me a second.
It may have been, thank heaven, here is not all the world. The buckeye does not grow in New England. And the mockingbird is rarely heard here. He's talking about Walden. The wild goose is more of a cosmopolite than we. He breaks his fast in Canada, takes a luncheon in Ohio. It's just like a luncheon in Ohio, and plumes himself for the night in a southern bayou. Really?
Birds.
Even the bison, to some extent, keeps pace with the seasons. Well, the birds migrate, so why don't people? Are we going to Florida?
People used to be like it, nomadic. That's what was it, nomad.
Well, the Indians had summer homes and winter homes. Mm-hmm. Many of them did. Even the bison, to some extent, keeps pace with the seasons. Cropping the pastures of the Colorado only till a greener and sweeter grass awaits them by the Yellowstone. Yet we think that if rail fences are pulled down and stone walls piled up on our farms, bounds are henceforth set to our lives and our fates decided. Somebody was saying, like, owning a house is sort of like a dead weight. It's like,
so better you have two houses then.
It's like anchors you to a place. The minimalists
have a lot of cares also.
Don't even own a house. Besides a car.
Well, do they live in the street?
Well, no, they don't. They rent and don't own. If you are a chosen town clerk, forsooth, you cannot go to Terra del Fuego this summer, but you may go to the land of infernal fire. Nevertheless, the universe is wider than our views of it. Tierra Fuego is at the bottom. Is it the bottom of Argentina?
Could be.
Are we able to go there? Yet we should oftener look over the taffrail of our craft like curious passengers and not make the voyage like stupid sailors picking oakum. The other side of the globe is but the home of our correspondent. Our voyaging is only great circle sailing, and the doctors prescribe for diseases of the skin merely. One hastens to South Africa to chase the giraffe, but surely that is not the game he would be after. How long, pray, would a man hunt giraffes if he could? Snipes and woodcocks also may afford rare sport, but I trust it would be nobler game to shoot oneself. He's recommending shooting yourself. Is that like annihilation and mysticism? Direct your eye right inward, and you'll find 1,000 regions in your mind yet undiscovered. Travel them and be expert in home cosmography. What is cosmography? What is cosmography?
It is the description of the heavens, of the cosmos.
What does Africa, what does the West stand for? Is not our own interior white on the chart? Black though prove like the coast one discovered, is it the source of the Nile or the Niger or the Mississippi or a northwest passage around this continent that we would find? Are these the problems which most concern mankind? Is Franklin the only man who is lost that his wife should be so earnest to find him? Does Mr. Grinnell know where he himself is? Do you know where you yourself is? Where are you? Be rather the Mungo Park, the Lewis and Clark and Frobisher of your own streams and oceans. Explore your own higher latitudes, and with shiploads of preserved meats to support you if they be necessary, and pile the empty cans sky high for a sign. Were preserved meats invented to preserve meat merely? Nay. But Columbus, a whole new continent and worlds within you, opening new channels, not of trade but of thought. Goodness. Every man is the lord of a realm beside which the earthly empire of the Tsar is but a petty state. Do you have an internal empire, and is the earthly empire a petty state, a humble hammock left by the ice? Yet some can be patriotic, who have no self-respect and sacrifice the greater to the less. They love the soil which makes their graves, but have no sympathy with the spirit which may still animate their clay. Patriotism is a maggot in their heads. Do you have maggots in your head? Are you patriotic?
Patriotic.
What was the meaning of the South Sea exploring exposition with all its parade and expense, but an indirect recognition of the fact that there are continents and seas in the moral world to which every man is an isthmus or an inlet yet unexplored by him, but it is easier to sail many thousand miles through cold and storm and cannibals in a government ship with 5 armored men and boys to assist one than it is to explore the private sea, the Atlantic and Pacific Ocean of one's being alone. I don't know the Latin quote, but let them wonder and scrutinize the outlandish Australians. I have more of God than they more of the road. It is not worth the while to go round the world to count the cats in Zanzibar. Yet do this even till you can do better, and you may perhaps find some simsole by which to get at the inside at last. England and France, Spain and Portugal, Gold Coast and Slave Coast, all front on this private sea, but no bark from them has ventured out of sight of land, though it is without doubt the direct way to India. If you would learn to speak all tongues and conform to the customs of all nations, if you would travel farther than all travelers, be naturalized in all climes, and cause the Sphinx to dash her head against a stone, even obey the precept of the old philosopher, and explore thyself. Do you explore yourself? Therein are demanded the eye and the nerve. Only the defeated and deserters go to wars, cowards that run away and re-enlist. Start now on that farthest western way, which does not pause at the Mississippi or the Pacific, nor conduct towards a worn-out China or Japan, but leads on a direct tangent to this fair summer and winter, day and night, sundown, moon down, and at last earth down too. He's saying go beyond the earth itself. Where's he traveling to? Cosma. Hmm. Well, you could travel within his book, I guess, by reading Walden. It is said that Mirabai took a highway robbery to ascertain what degree of resolution was necessary in order to place oneself in formal opposition to the most sacred laws of society. Mirabai. Indian woman saint? Yeah, but then it says, he declared that a soldier who fights in the ranks does not require half so much courage as a footpad. Quote, that honor and religion have never stood in the way of a well-considered and a firm resolve. This was manly as the world goes, and yet it was idle, if not desperate. A saner man would have found himself often enough in formal opposition to what are deemed, quote, the most sacred laws of society, though through obedience to yet more sacred laws, and to have tested his resolution without going out of his way. It is not for a man to put himself in such an attitude to society, but to maintain himself in whatever attitude he finds himself through obedience to the laws of his being, which will never be one of opposition to a just government if he should chance to meet with such. I left the woods for as good a reason as I went there. He left it for as good a reason as he went there. Perhaps it seemed to me I had several more lives to live and could not spare any more time for that one. It was remarkable how easily and insensibly we fall into a particular route and make a beaten track for ourselves. I had not lived there a week before my feet wore a path from my door to the pond side. Though it is 5 or 6 years since I trod it, it is still quite distinct. It is true, I fear that others may have fallen into it, and so help to keep it open. The surface of the earth is soft and impressionable by the feet of men. So with the paths which the mind travels. How worn and dusty then must be the highways of the world. How deep the ruts of tradition and conformity. I did not wish to take a cabin passage, but rather to go before the mast and on the deck of the world, for there I could best see the moonlight amid the mountains. I did not wish to go below now. I learned this, at least for my experiment, that if one advances confidently in the direction of his dreams and endeavors to live the life which he has imagined, he will meet with a success unexpected in common hours. He will put some things behind, will pass an inevitable boundary. New, universal, and more liberal laws will begin to establish themselves around and within him, or the old laws be expanded and interpreted in his favor in a more liberal sense, and he will live with the license of a higher order of beings, in proportion as he simplifies. In proportion as he simplifies his life, the laws of the universe will appear less complex, and solitude will not be solitude, nor poverty, nor weakness. In proportion as he simplifies his life, the laws of the universe will appear less complex, and solitude will not be solitude, nor poverty, nor weakness. If you have built castles in the air, Your work need not be lost. That is where they should be. Now put the foundations under them. It is a ridiculous demand which England and America make, that you should speak so that they can understand you. He's against just English, but demanding that you speak English. Neither men nor toadstools grow so, as if that were important. There were not enough to understand you without them, as if nature could support but one order of understanding, could not sustain birds as well as quadrupeds, flying as well as creeping things, and hush and who, which bright can understand, were the best English. As if there were safety in stupidity alone. I fear, chiefly least, my expression may not be extravagant enough, may not wander far enough beyond the narrow limits of my daily experience, so as to be adequate to the truth of which I have been convinced. Extravagance. It depends on how you are yarded. The migrating buffalo which seeks new pastures in another latitude is not extravagant like the cow which kicks over the pail, leaps the cowyard fence, and runs after her calf in milking time. The buffalo is not extravagant. Like the cow, I desire to speak somewhere without bounds, like a man in a waking moment, two men in their waking moments, for I am convinced that I cannot exaggerate enough even to lay the foundation of a true expression. Who that has heard a strain of music feared then least he should speak extravagantly any more forever. In view of the future, or possible, we should live quite laxly in and undefined in front, our outlines dim and misty on the side, as our shadows reveal an insensible perspiration towards the sun. The volatile truth of our words should continually betray the inadequacy of the residual statement. Their truth is instantly translated. Its literal monument alone remains. The words which express our faith and piety are not definite, yet they are significant and fragrant, like frankincense to superior natures. Why level downward to our dullest perception always, and praise that as common sense? The commonest sense is the sense of men asleep. Do you think just sleeping is common? Which they express by snoring. God, that's common. He's saying that snoring is like the commonest. Sometimes we are inclined to class those who are once and a half-witted with the half-witted, because we appreciate only a third part of their wit. Some would find fault with the morning red if they ever got up early enough. Do you think there's something wrong with the morning red?
What's the morning red?
The early morning is too red. They pretend, as I hear, that the verses of Kabir. See, Kabir comes in now.
Your friend.
My friend Kabir. Kabir is like the ultimate. That the verses of Kabir. God, he cites them. have 4 different senses: illusion, spirit, intellect, and the esoteric doctrine of the Vedas. Can you read Kabir in 4 senses? But in this part of the world it is considered a ground for complaint if a man's writings admit of more than one interpretation. Do you think if you write vaguely without defining your meaning that it's something that people can complain about? You shouldn't be writing poetry. It's got too many interpretations. While England endeavors to cure the potato rot, will not any endeavor to cure the brain rot, which prevails so much more widely and fatally? I do not suppose that I have attained to obscurity, but I should be proud if no more fatal fault were found in my pages on this score than was found in the Walden ice. Southern customers objected to its blue color, which is the evidence of its purity, as if it were muddy, and preferred the Cambridge ice, which is white, but taste of weeds. The purity man love is like the mist which he envelope the earth, and not like the azure either beyond. Some are dinning in our ears that we Americans and moderns generally are intellectual dwarfs compared with the ancients and even the Elizabethan men. Do you always say that we're not as great as the old Greeks? How could you say that? You always say that Plato is greater, Socrates is greater than me. But I claim to know even less than Socrates, so that makes me greater than him. I know even less than Socrates. But what is that to the purpose? A living dog is better than a dead lion. I'm a living dog, so I'm technically better than Socrates. Should a man go and hang himself because he belongs to the race of pygmies and not be the biggest pygmy that he can? Let everyone mind his own business, endeavor to be what he was made. Do you mind your own business? Why should we be in such desperate haste to succeed in such desperate enterprises if a man does not keep pace with his companions, perhaps because he hears a different drummer? Is that a famous line?
I've never heard it before.
You gotta be kidding.
Right.
If a man does not keep pace with his companions, perhaps it is because he hears a different drummer.
Yeah, that's true.
Do you feel
it gives you the steps?
My drummer's the same as everyone else's? Let him step to the music which he hears, however measured or far away.
To a different drummer, mostly.
It is not important that he should mature as soon as an apple tree or an oak. Shall he turn his spring into summer? If the conditions of things which we were made for is not yet, what were any reality which we can substitute? We will not be shipwrecked on the vain reality, shall we? With pains erect a heaven of blue grass over ourselves. Though when it is done we shall be sure to gaze still at the true ethereal heaven far above, as if the former were not. There was an artist in the city of Thoreau who was disposed to strive after perfection. One day it came into his mind to make a staff, having considered that in an imperfect work time is an ingredient, but into a perfect work time does not enter. He said to himself, it shall be perfect in all respects, though I should do nothing else in my life. He proceeded instantly to the forest for wood, being resolved that it should not be made of unsuitable material. And as he searched for and rejected stick after stick, his friends gradually deserted him, for they grew old in their works and died. But he grew not older for a moment. His singleness of purpose and resolution and his elevated piety endowed him without his knowledge with perennial youth. As he made no compromise with time, time kept out of his way and only sighed at a distance because he could not overcome him. Before he had found a stock in all respects suitable in the city of Kuro was a hoary ruin, and he sat on one of his mounds to peel the stick. Before he had given it the proper shape, the dynasty of the Kaldahars was at an end, and with the point of the stick he wrote the name of the last of that race in the sand, and then resumed his work. Yeah, I don't believe in monotonism in reading. It's wrong to be monotone.
Do that, though.
By the time he had smoothed and polished the staff, Kalpa was no longer the pole star. And he had put on the ferrule and the head adorned with the precious stones. Brahma awoke and slumbered many times. But why do I stay to mention these things? When the finishing stroke was put to his work, it suddenly expanded before the eyes of the astonished artist into the fairest of all the creations of Brahma. He had made a new system of making a staff, a world with full and fair proportions, in which, though the old cities and dynasties had passed away, fairer and more glorious ones had taken their place, and now he saw by the heap of shavings still fresh at his feet that, for him and his work, the former lapse of time had been an illusion, and that no more time had elapsed than is required for a single scintillation from the brain of Brahma to fall on and inflame the tinder of a mortal brain. The material was pure and his art was pure. How could the result be other than wonderful? No face which we can give to a matter will steed us so well as the truth, for this alone bears well. For the most part, we are not where we are, but in the false position. Through an infirmity of our natures, we suppose a case and put ourselves into it, and hence are in two cases at the same time, and it is doubly difficult to get out. In sane moments, we regard only the facts, the case, that is, say what we have to say, not what we ought. Any truth is better than make-believe. Tom Hyde, the tinker, standing on the gallows, was asked if he had anything to say. Tell the tailors, unquote, he said, to remember to make a knot in thy thread before they take the first stitch, unquote. His companion's prayer is forgotten. However mean your life is, meet it and live it. He says to meet your life and live it. Do not shun it and call it hard names. It is not so bad as you are. It looks poorest when you are richest. The faint fault finder will find faults even in paradise. Do you think fault finders find fault in paradise?
Absolutely.
Fault finding is just like a habit. Love your life.
Distinguish beauty. Some people will easily distinguish what's wrong with something.
Yeah, there's something wrong with paradise.
You can show them a beautiful painting, and if there is some dust on the frame, they'll see the dust on the frame.
I don't like paradise because I find it doesn't have enough faults. Love your life, poor as it is. You may perhaps have some pleasant, thrilling, glorious hours, even in a poorhouse. The setting sun is reflected from the windows of the almshouse as brightly as from the rich man's abode. Yeah, basically the world's the same to the rich and the poor man. The sunlight and the air. And
one
It's really pretty much the same.
Surrenders himself with very inexpensive materials. The other one surrenders in gold. I mean,
you know, like I'm so much richer than Bill Gates. Quite significantly richer.
You should think of that.
Because I read Thoreau recently. Brightly as a man's bow, the snow melts before its day, as early in the spring. I did not see, but a quiet mind may live as contentedly there, and have as cheering thoughts as in a palace.
In a palace, they may not have cheering thoughts.
You don't have cheering
thoughts. They may be
thoughts.
afraid that any moment they can.
I would be afraid of invasion.
Disturbed.
The town's poor seem to me often to live the most independent lives of any. Maybe they are simply great enough to receive without misgiving. Most think that they are above being supported by the town, but it oftener happens that they are not above supporting themselves by dishonest means, which should be more disreputable. Cultivate poverty like a gardener, like sage. He wants it to be like sage.
Cultivate poverty, he said.
You don't want to cultivate poverty.
That's the only one that will save the environment.
We've been cultivating poverty. We've been cultivating poverty by doing this reading instead of working. Do not trouble yourself much to get new things. Whether clothes or friends, turn the old and return to them. Things do not change, we change. Things do not change, but we change. Are you changing now?
Certainly.
But things are not changing, but you're changing. Sell your clothes and keep your thoughts.
We change things also.
I thought when you declutter
the phones.
Yeah, but I like to declutter my clothes and declutter my thoughts so I don't keep them.
Oh, you keep too much.
I keep my thoughts?
Keep a lot.
I declutter my thoughts. God will see that you do not want society. God sees that you do not want society. If I were confined to a corner of a garret all my days like a spider, the world would be just as large to me while I had my thoughts about me. He had a talent for solitude, probably, but I thought solitude was the best of luck under Sawan Singh. The philosopher said, I had
more years of solitude than he did.
Well, you should have a solitude like on a meditation retreat or something.
20 years of solitude.
The philosopher said, from an army of 3 divisions, one can take away its general and put it in disorder. From the man, the most abject and the vulgar one cannot take away his thought. Do not seek so anxiously to be developed to subject yourself to many influences to be played on. It is all dissipation. Humility, like darkness, reveals the heavenly lights. He says that humility reveals the heavenly lights. If you want the heavenly lights, you need humility. The shadows of poverty.
Humility is when you don't concentrate about yourself, you know. You're not, the opposite is like egoistic. All you see is you.
Yeah.
So if you don't see you,
if you're looking at yourself, you can't see the heavenly lights. The shadows of poverty and meanness gather around us, and lo, creation widens to our view. We are often reminded that if there were bestowed on us the wealth of Croesus, our aims must still be the same, and our means essentially the same. Moreover, if you are restricted to in your range by poverty, if you cannot buy books and newspapers, for instance, you are but confined to the most significant and vital experiences. You are compelled to deal with the material which yields the most sugar and the most starch. She's saying to cut off your internet and television and phone and library and iPhone and have nothing going. Goodness. It is life near the bone where it is sweetest. You are defended from being a trifler. No man loses ever on. This goes on and on. A lower level by magnanimity on a higher. Superfluous wealth can buy superfluities only. Money is not required to buy one necessity of the soul. Goodness. Maybe we'll finish if we keep going. I live in the angle of a leaden wall, into whose composition was poured a little alley of bell metal. Often, in the repose of my midday, there reaches my ear a confused tintinnabellum from without. It is the noise of my contemporaries. His contemporaries are just noise. My neighbors tell me of their adventures with famous gentlemen and ladies, what notabilities they met at the dinner table, but I am no more interested in such things than in the contents of the Daily Times. He doesn't care about the news. The interest and the conversation are about custom and manners chiefly, but
not interested in those getting together.
But a goose is a goose still, dress it as you will. They tell me of California and Texas, of England and of the Indies, and of the Honorable Mr. of Georgia or of Massachusetts, all transient and fleeting phenomena, till I am ready to leap from their courtyard like the Mameluke Bay. I delight to come to my bearings, not walk in procession with pomp and parade in a conspicuous place, to walk even with the builder of the universe, if I may, not to live in this restless, nervous, bustling, trivial 19th century. Dear, do you think the 21st century is restless, nervous, bustling, and trivial?
It's beyond that.
No. 19th century, but stand or sit thoughtfully while it goes by. What are men celebrating?
Maybe we are on a decline already, let's say. Maybe that was the beginning, the rise of all that we had.
Well, if you have a lot of distraction,
decline already,
you measure advance of culture by length of time of concentration or the amount of interruptions. So if you can watch without break, without interruption, let's say you can meditate for a week without interruption. They are all on a committee of arrangements and hourly expect a speech from somebody. God is only the president of the day. And Webster is his orator. I love to weigh, to settle, to gravitate towards that which most strongly and rightfully attracts me, not hang by the beam of the scale and try to weigh less. Not suppose a case, but take the case that is, to travel the only path I can, and that on which no power can resist me. It affords me no satisfaction to commence to spring an arc before I have got a solid foundation. Let us not play at Kitley benders. Have you been playing Kitley benders?
What's that?
Don't know. There is a solid bottom everywhere. We read that the traveler asked the boy if swamp before him had a hard bottom. The boy replied that it had. But presently, does the swamp have a hard bottom? Does your swamp have a hard bottom? But presently the traveler's horse sank in up to the girths, and he observed to the boy, I thought you said that this bog had a hard bottom. So it has, answered the latter, but you have not got halfway to it yet. So it is with the bogs and quicksands of society, but he is an old boy that knows it. Only what is thought said, or done, at a certain rare coincidence is good. I would not be one of those who will foolishly drive a nail into mere lath and plastering. Such a deed would keep me awake at nights. Give me a hammer and let me feel for the furrowing. Do not depend on the putty. Drive a nail home and clinch it so faithfully that you can wake up in this night and think of your work with satisfaction, a work of which you would not be ashamed to invoke the muse. So will help you God. So only every nail driven should be as another rivet in the machine of the universe. You carry on the work. Rather than love, than money, than fame, give me truth. I sat at a table where were rich food and wine in abundance and obsequious attendance, but sincerity and truth were not. I went away hungry from the inhospitable board. The hospitality was as cold as the ices. I thought that there was no need of ice to freeze them. You talked to me of the age of the wine and the fame of the vintage. But I thought of an older and newer and purer wine of a more glorious vintage which they had not got and could not buy. The style, the house, and the grounds, and the entertainment passed for nothing with me. I called on the king, but he made me wait in his hall, and conducted like a man incapacitated for hospitality. There was a man in my neighborhood who lived in a hollow tree. His manners were truly regal. I shall have done better had I called on him. How long shall we sit in our porticos practicing idle, musty virtues, which our work, any work, would make impertinent? If, as one were to begin the day with long suffering and hire a man to hoe his potatoes, and in the afternoon go forth to practice Christian meekness and charity with goodness aforethought, consider the China pride and stagnant self-complacency of mankind. This generation includes a little to congratulate itself on being the last of an illustrious line in Boston and London and Paris and Rome, thinking of its long descent. It speaks of its progress in art and science and literature with satisfaction. There are the records of the philosophical societies and the public eulogies of great men. It is the good Adam contemplating his own virtue. Yes, we have done great deeds and sung divine songs which shall never die. That is, as long as we can remember them. The learned societies and the great men of Assyria, where are they? What youthful philosophers and environmentalists we are. Are you a youthful philosopher and environmentalist? Mm-mm. There is not one of my readers who has yet lived a whole human life. Did we ever live a whole human life? Technically, you couldn't have lived a whole human life if you're in the process of reading this. These may be but the spring months in the life of the race if we have had the 7 years itch. We have not seen the 17-year locust yet in Concord. We are acquainted with the mere pericle of the globe on which we live. Most have not dwelled 6 feet beneath the surface, nor leaped as many above it. We know not where we are. Perhaps we are sound asleep nearly half of our time, yet we esteem ourselves wise. Do you esteem yourself as wise? And have an established order on the surface? Truly, we are deep thinkers. We are ambitious spirits as we stand over the insect crawling amid the pine needles on the forest floor, and endeavoring to conceal itself from our sight, and ask myself why it will cherish those humble thoughts and hide its head from me, who might perhaps be its benefactor, and impart to its race some cheering information. I am reminded of the greater benefactor and intelligence that stands over me, the human insect. See, he's only an insect. What if we're just insects? It could be. technically, we're like an insect. There is an incessant influx of novelty into the world, and yet we tolerate incredible dullness. I need only suggest that. What kind of sermons are still listened to in the most enlightened countries? There are such words as joy and sorrow, but they are only the burden of a psalm, sung with a nasal twang, while we believe in the ordinary and mean. We think that we can change our clothes only. It is said that the British Empire is very large and respectable, and that the United States are a first-rate power. We do not believe that a tide rises and falls behind every man which can float the British Empire like a chip. If we should ever harbor it in his mind, who knows what sort of 17-year locust will next come out of the ground? The government of the world I live in was not framed, like that of Britain, in after-dinner conversations over wine. Life in us is like the water in the river. It may rise this year higher than man has ever known it, and flood the parched uplands. Even this may be the eventual year, which will drown out all our muskrats. It was not always dry land where we dwell. I see far inland the banks which the stream anciently washed before science began to record its freshets. Everyone has heard the story which has gone the rounds of New England, of a strong and beautiful bug which came out of the dry leaf of an old table of apple tree wood, which had stood in a farmer's kitchen for 60 years. Oh. Do you hear that?
Mm-hmm.
First in Connecticut and afterward in Massachusetts, from an egg deposited in the living tree many years earlier still, as appeared by counting the inner layers beyond it, which has heard gnawing out for several weeks, hatched perchance by the heat of an urn. Who does not feel his faith in the resurrection and immortality strengthened by hearing of this? Who knows what beautiful and winged life, whose egg has been buried for ages under many concentric layers of woodness in the dead, dry life of society, deposited at first in the arboretum of the green and living tree, which has been gradually converted into the semblance of its well-seasoned tome, heard, perchance, gnawing out now for years by the astonished family of man, as they sat round the festive board, may unexpectedly come forth from amidst society's most trivial and hand-selled furniture to enjoy its perfect summer life at last. I do not say that John or Jonathan will realize all this, but such is the character of that morrow which mere lapse of time can never make to dawn. The light which puts out our eyes is darkness to us. Only that day dawns to which we are awake. There is more day to dawn. The sun is but a morning star.
Finished.
That's the finish of Walden, which the closing line is, the light,
What happened?
lapse of time could never make to dawn. The light which puts out our eyes is darkness to us. Only that day dawns to which we are awake. There is more day to dawn. The sun is but a morning star.
Disappear.